Last year, I released a game called the Perplexing Orb Bounce and Roll. It didn't make a lot of money, but I really liked it, and the people who played it really liked it. So I thought to myself, what if I make a spin off and just make it way harder? So, in today's short devlog, I want to talk about some of the level design changes, the character controller changes, and how I'm balancing difficulty and fairness in the new game, the Perplexing Orb Bounce Challenge. If you've seen some of our teaser footage so far, it might just look like the game is just really, really hard just because there's a bunch of skinny paths, and I just took the formula of the original game and then just made the platforms smaller, and then boom, you have a new game. But that's not exactly what I've done. In order to make the game not absolutely mind-numbingly frustrating, I've actually recoded the character controller to make it easier to jump and easier to jump off of platforms and easier to climb back onto platforms, so you can actually control better. I made the controls better, but I made the levels harder. In the first game, basically, in order to jump, you had to be centered on a platform. And as soon as your orb started rolling off of a platform, if the center of the orb was no longer over the ground, but part of the orb was still connected to the platform, and you tried to jump, you would not be able to jump. And then you would just roll right off to your death. And in the Perplexing Orb Bounce and Roll, once you became airborne, quote unquote, or no longer centered over a platform, you lost the ability to move as fast. You had an aerial momentum stat. However, in the new game, the Perplexing Orb Bounce Challenge, as long as part of the orb is touching a platform, even if it's off to the side and you've fallen off the side, but part of you is still touching the platform, and that platform is considered to be the ground, then you can still jump. And by being able to jump, you also have a little bit of stronger momentum over the control of the orb before you let go of the side of the platform. This provides an exciting and much better speedrunning mode for the time trials. In the original game, I made time trials and then I tried to make the craziest times. I played the levels over and over and got as fast as I could. I left everyone my dev time so that they could try to beat it, but I also put in more regular standards for just gold time trials as well. However, there were some problems with the game's time trial mode for people who were actually really serious about trying to beat them. I got some feedback from some of our OG TreeFall tribe members who actually wanted to try to beat the time trials, and I found there were a few things that were pretty frustrating that I have now since fixed in the new game. Well, number one is the controls, because I just mentioned previously the first thing we fixed was being able to jump a little bit easier. Still, if you lose the ground or any connection to the ground, you can't jump. So if you're going way too fast and you're kind of bumping over the ground, you might press the jump button and still might not be able to jump, but now the controls are much more responsive and you can basically guarantee a certain type of run that you can replicate over and over, so it makes it better for time trials now. But the number two, or I guess number one time trial complaint, is the fact that once you beat the level, you were given a prompt to either retry to go for a faster time or skip to the next level. Or if you paused the game, you would have to quit out in the first game. You couldn't just restart the time trial. So if you messed up and you're like, oh, this is not as fast as I could be, I want to restart, you'd have to pause the game, exit the level, go back to the time trial menu and reselect the level. That is now fixed, and you just have an instant reload button where it zips through the loading screen instantly and doesn't even give you the loading screen animation. If you just press the triangle button while playing in the new game Bounce Challenge, it will just instantly reload. So if you mess up, you can just restart instantly, just like in the Tilting Tiles games. So this has actually made time trials way more fun. And not only that, I have basically built an entire deeper layer on the game for speedrunners specifically, not just by making dev times, but by including hidden paths and hidden routes that are the optimal ways to complete levels that you might be able to notice some of the route just by looking at it and thinking, oh, can I jump to that over there? Is that a jumpable object? And then you find out that this level environment art actually it has been coded as ground for the time trial so that you can jump and skip parts of the levels. So that I basically included shortcuts, but some of them are so obscure that you would basically have to try to go breaking the level and jumping on everything and seeing what is coded as ground. Honestly, saying all that is a little bit too much in the spoiler territory, but I don't think that many people are going to watch this devlog. So I think a lot of people are going to be shocked when they see some of the dev times and be like, whoa, how on earth am I going to be able to beat that? And the mystery and discovery of trying to figure out how to basically break the level and beat my time is going to be a whole game in itself. Also, to briefly mention, part of the level design for the last point we'll wrap up this devlog on is there are now actually new objects. In the original game Bounce and Roll, there were things like the moving saws in the castle, and there were elevators that would go up and down. And I basically created a Dark Souls-like elevator system where if you got on one elevator, it would go up and then the other one would come down, or vice versa. So you would always have another elevator to get back on to go back to where you needed to go. Well, in this game, I've actually changed the elevator code and rewrote that so you can now have single elevator systems to where when you die, the elevator will return back to the position where it started at. So if you fall off, it will go back and you can just repeat the level instead of having to go on the alternate elevator. And that was so I could actually create some level designs where you have multiple elevators in a row, and you had to jump from elevator to elevator because it's a very tight window that you have to land in, so it really tests your ability to control the orb with the stick through the air, pulling back and knowing how to land just underneath the collider. So there's some cool level designs that way by recoding the elevators. So it's pretty cool. So you can jump on multiple elevators and go 1, 2, 3. And then if you fall and restart the level, you can just see them all like slowly going back into their position. So that's a cool new object feature for this game. But I also created like some spinning saws. If you've seen some of our preview footage before, and you can be looking at it now in this devlog, we have some spinning saws now in the desert world, and they go fast, and the saws themselves are spinning inside of a giant spinning object. So it's a bunch of rotation code there, but basically if you jump and whack yourself into one of those, it's going to send you flying, and it's hilarious. It can be frustrating if you're trying to get a perfect time trial and you're going as fast as you can on stage 3, and that last spinning saw just sends you into oblivion. Good luck trying to beat my time. I'll just say that. It's pretty awesome, and it's a whole lot of fun. But I'm excited for the Perplexing Orb Bounce Challenge. I know it's not going to be for everyone because sometimes difficult games steer people away. So I wanted to make this devlog to talk about how we changed the character controller to make it more responsive, make it easier to stay on platforms, make it easier to recover on platforms, so you can understand why we've made a bunch of skinny levels, creative levels, smaller platforms. It's all about movement. It's all about controlling the physics of the orb to try to land on that tiny little spot. And when you're able to do it, is the most satisfying thing ever. Of course, not every level is super difficult. They start off easier and then ramp up in difficulty, and it's still mostly vertical, and you're jumping and you're having to bounce and roll still. For bounce challenge, you're still able to jump, and everything is about timing your jumps and moving the momentum in the air. But one more piece of the fairness to help more players who might be turned off by the difficulty of this game is we've added a checkpoint system. So now for the first time ever, there are checkpoints in the Perplexing Orb, and some levels are so long because we've really experimented with longer levels in this game, longer levels than any other Perplexing Orb game. There's actually 2 checkpoints in certain levels. So when you knock down a checkpoint post and you die, you will return back to that point. We thought about like respawning your lives and just keeping it at 5 lives when you hit a checkpoint, but instead in this game, since it's so difficult, another addition to balancing the fairness is instead of 5 lives, you now get 10 lives, and you get checkpoints for rest spots so you can respawn and not have to do difficult sections of the level over and over again when you're dying and struggling at the very end. I think between all of our fairness options, between quality of life features of checkpoints, increased lives, and a better character controller, it really balances out with a very highly difficult and precision-based level design, and it's going to provide an experience that all players will get to enjoy and try out, and then players who really want to take the difficulty to the next level will have a blast going for the dev times in the time trial mode. That was my thought process, my thinking, and my designing behind the Perplexing Orb Bounce Challenge. I'm actually trying to get this game out this month in August on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Release date information will be coming soon. If you guys are excited for the Perplexing Orb Bounce Challenge after hearing all of this information behind the scenes on the development of the game, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Before I go, I need to give a shout out to everybody who supports TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I got to give a personal shout out to Carmen Red, Shark and Minnow, PLP, Thomas Stewart, and Space My Name. Thank you guys for what you do for TreeFall Studios on patreon.com. I couldn't do what I do without you guys. You can find the links down to our Patreon page if you're interested in the description below. And if you want to hang out with the TreeFall tribe and join our community, we also have a free Discord invite down below, and you guys can hang out there as well. All right, without further ado, I will catch you guys in the next video.